I'm going to finish this story in a minute, but I will tell you that in between breaks, I went out into the hallway, and we have been working on something for the last 24 hours because the receiving airports are full, and our State Department is blocking these people from leaving. And through divine providence, which I will tell you in a little while, we happen to be traveling with somebody who had an answer. And he has been working for 24 hours, and that answer is about to come through. But we were talking about the cost of this, and it's going to cost about... It's going to cost about $2 million for 1,000 people. And everybody looked at me, and I said, gosh, I can't believe we're negotiating for people. But I think $2 million is probably a good price for 1,000 people. But it is bizarre what is going on right now. And our country is on the wrong side. For the first time in my life, I am ashamed, truly ashamed, morally ashamed of our country. Senator Tom Cotton joins us now, and I'm guessing he feels somewhat the same way about what is happening. Senator, how are you, sir? Thanks for joining us.
Glenn, it's good to be back on with you, but under very difficult circumstances, of course. What's happened in Afghanistan over the last couple of weeks is sad. It's tragic. It is shameful, disgraceful, humiliating, embarrassing. And maybe worst of all, Glenn, it wasn't predictable. It was predicted. Many observed that if President Biden executed his decision withdrawal in the middle of the fighting season by withdrawing the critical enabling support that the Taliban had, that the Afghan army had, for instance, with Western contractors to keep their Air Force flying, we'd be pulling the rug out from underneath them. And you've started to see some reports come out in the media that says that it was predicted directly to Joe Biden, no matter what he's been saying to the American people, that this would be the fate that we face right now.
Senator, there are bad decisions, but this is a pattern here now. It's not just a pattern because of what he has done before. I mean a pattern here. There is a doubling down of everything. There is a refusal to see what is going on, which makes me wonder if, A, the president is mentally competent, and that's being kind, or there is something else at play here, because there's not an ally that is with us. There is not a sane individual, left, right, center. It doesn't matter. Politics all aside, there's blood all over our hands on this. And I can't figure out why. Why is this happening? Why is he doing this?
So, Glenn, the pattern, I would say, goes back now 50 years. Remember, Bob Gates famously said of Joe Biden when they both served in the Obama administration that he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security decision of his lifetime. It was 40 years when Secretary Gates wrote that. It's 50 years now. The difference is for most of those 50 years, it didn't matter too much because he was a senator and then a vice president. He wasn't in charge, but he is in charge now. And you see in catastrophic relief the consequences of his terrible judgment. I think his attitude over the last 2 weeks does also reflect something of Joe Biden's character, kind of like the anytime he's challenged, he defaults to this wise guy attitude of mocking the media. Now, I understand that he's not used to being challenged by the media, but they finally have started to press him on his numerous falsehoods and press those people around him. And you can tell that it gets under his skin and he gets spiteful and prideful and bitter. And he just digs in his heels even more, even though the circumstances on the ground are obviously deteriorating and they have been for some time.
Well, that's what I can't figure out. Is anyone telling him the truth of what's going on? Or is the Pentagon for the? Is there anyone that is standing up in his council that is saying, Mr. President, I understand you already made the decision, but now the entire world is not standing with us and people are going to die. There are Americans that you are leaving behind. Is anyone saying that to him?
Yeah, Glenn, all of his speeches on the question have been dangerously detached from reality now for a couple of weeks. Just as frankly that speech in early July was, when he said there'd be no Saigon moment, we wouldn't have a collapse of the government. I think it's pretty clear, based on the news report, that both the Department of Defense and our intelligence agencies were sounding those alarms to President Biden. But another thing about which I want to remind your listeners that Bob Gates said is that Joe Biden has a very mistrustful relationship with senior military leaders. Even Barack Obama has said in his own memoirs that Joe Biden, as vice president, constantly cautioned then President Obama about listening to the senior military leaders at the Pentagon about how they were going to try to box him in, how they'd try to direct policy, not implement his policy. And I think you see the consequences of that, of President Biden's attitude now, is that despite the warnings from senior leaders, the Pentagon and intelligence agencies, he plowed straight ahead. So I think, Glenn, the real question then becomes, are those closest to him in the White House, in his inner circle, speaking the truth to him? Are they conveying the genuine news? And I have questions if they are, based on those speeches he's given. And also, Glenn, I have to say, I think some of them view this as just kind of a bad, news day. Like in a campaign, you send Joe Biden out to a radio interview in the campaign last year, and he makes a gaffe, and you've got a couple days of bad headlines. But pretty soon things move on. And they're treating this fiasco in Afghanistan like it's just a bad headline from a campaign, and they want to just turn the page and get back to their reckless $3.5 trillion budget. But it's not just a bad headline whenever you've got hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans trapped behind enemy lines. It's reality. And those Americans are going to be stuck there after Tuesday, to say nothing of the green card holders that we can't get into the country, and those Afghans who served alongside us and who have been vetted and approved for a special immigrant visa. They're all going to be stranded.
The word is here, I'm in the Middle East, and the word is here that there are 1,800 that worked for the embassy that have special visas, want to get out, and have no chance of getting out now. We're leaving them behind. It's reprehensible.
Yeah, I mean, it is reprehensible. It's appalling. It's also strategically foolish. Imagine the challenges we'll have for years to come if we ever need local support in a hot spot around the world. This is one reason why great and respected countries keep their word, which Joe Biden now has broken flagrantly, and in a way that will reverberate for years to come.
So there's no way to stop this? There's not an appetite in Congress to and I don't mean from the Republicans, I mean from the Democrats. Is there not enough people in Congress and in the Senate to stand up and be a check and a balance on this reckless, dangerous behavior?
Well, Glenn, I think what you've seen from the Democrats is a deafening silence. A very, very few number of Democrats, oftentimes veterans themselves, maybe serving on the Armed Services or the Intelligence Committee, have suggested that we need to, at a minimum, stay as long as it takes to get out all of the Americans who are in Afghanistan. But most Democrats just don't want to talk about it at all. As you saw with Nancy Pelosi, she just wanted to talk about their reckless $3.5 trillion budget. They're like President Biden's flip blades. They just want to keep their head down, grit and bear it like it's a bad news cycle on a campaign, and then turn the page. Hopefully, after next Tuesday, it's all going to be out of the headlines, and the media will move on.
It's going to be
I
worse.
don't see how are we going to move on if we have hundreds or even thousands of Americans who are stranded in Afghanistan when the Taliban at that point control not just all the border crossings, but all the airports in the country.
And this is, I mean, the only hope, and I say this with just callous disregard to humanity, but the only hope is that there will be no press there to report it. But so far, the Taliban still has Twitter, still has Facebook, and I don't think they're going to be shy in showing some of it.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
then
pretty
they'll
amazing.
violate the
Yeah.
Twitter standards.
Well, I mean, that is a big difference between one of the big differences between where we are now and where the Taliban was 20 years ago before 9/11 is social media didn't really exist back then. And as we've seen with ISIS over the years, ISIS is very aggressive in their use of social media for propaganda purposes and recruiting and training. And I suspect that'll be the same. That'll be true of the Taliban as well.
Quickly, one last question. I know you've got to run. Thank you, for kicking some butt with the State Department. But can you give me an update on the State Department? We last night had an ambassador called in, I think it's Macedonia. They closed off. We were looking for places where we can fly people in just to hold them. And Macedonia was one of them. And our ambassador, or the ambassador of Macedonia, was called by the State Department and told not to take any of these people. What the hell?
Yeah, I hadn't heard that specific report, Glenn, but I've heard similar reports. I know that our people on the ground inside the airport, both Department of Defense, intelligence agencies, and our State Department officials are trying to move heaven and earth to get people into the airport and out of the country. But the senior leadership at the State Department is a different kettle of fish. I heard a story just this morning that we weren't even allowing British nationals to get inside the airport with their Afghan partners and fly to Great Britain at private expense. So again, this wouldn't even have an impact on the American government or taxpayer. And it's not, a country that people have never heard of. It's Great Britain. I'm very disturbed by these reports, and I'm trying to get answers on all of them. At a minimum, we should be allowing countries that are willing to accept Afghans or willing to send charter or charity flights into Kabul to do that to clean up some of President Biden's mess.
Yes, you don't want to do it. Fine, we'll do it. But they won't even, they are obstructing us every step of the way. And I don't know if it's out of spite, ignorance. I have no idea. I don't care, but it should stop now.
Yeah, no, Glenn, I definitely, I hear you and I agree with you. And I'm just worried that they're about to roll up stakes in the next 24 or 48 hours. If Joe Biden is hell-bent to have every last troop onto the airports on Tuesday, August 31, well, they're not going to be flying mass evacuation charters out, through Tuesday afternoon. They've got to start getting our troops out as well.
Well, we will for as long as we possibly can. Senator, thank you so much. Thanks for your service to the country here in Afghanistan, and thank you for your service in the Senate as well. God bless.
Thank you, Glenn.